Silverfort, we had a older gray-haired gentleman, sales rep, join about a year ago, and he wanted an intro call with me, which is awesome. I love it when salespeople want to talk to me. And he kind of goes, "Well, Michelle, I've been doing this for a long time and I've never gotten along with the success team." And I said, "Well, I've been doing this for a long time too. And this is my third rodeo. And I've never worked at a company where sales and success haven't gotten along. So I hope I can prove you wrong." And a month later, I was on a call. It was an EBR with one of his strategic accounts with him and the strategic CSM. And he slacks me and he goes, "Jason, who is the CSM for the account, he goes, he's incredible." And I said, "So does this mean I've changed your mind that sales and success can get along?" And he said, "Sold."
Hello, and welcome to the CX Files podcast. Today's guest is Michelle Wideman. She currently serves as the Chief Customer Officer at Silverfort, a leader in the unified identity protection space. At Silverfort, she orchestrates the global customer success and support strategy for an organization that has realized 5 consecutive years of nearly 100% revenue growth. Previously, she established the foundational customer success infrastructure as the first ever Chief Customer Officer at Oona and held executive leadership roles at Dell Boomi, where she transitioned from a high-performance sales leader to a pioneer in customer success. Her career is distinguished by her ability to bridge technical, operational excellence with human-centric leadership, earning her accolades from the Customer Success Collective and the title of Distinguished Alumna from Elon University. Michelle, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
So I always like to open, as my listeners will know, with a background question to let us set the stage. Can you tell us about some of your first experiences or early experiences in customer success and what stood out to you? What was a surprise or what caught you off guard?
So when Dell Boomi, I think it was back in 2018, decided that they wanted to elevate the customer success team and appoint the first ever chief customer success officer, I was lucky enough to get tapped for the job. So I walk into the room with the existing CSMs for the first time, and they have a look of terror on their face because they're looking at me and going, "Oh, dear God, she has run sales. She is going to want to turn us into sales reps. What did we just get ourselves into?" And I think I will always remember their looks on their face. And it's one of my favorite success stories because you fast forward a year later, and I really felt like the team went from feeling like the bastard stepchild of the organization to we won Gainsight's like team player or best success team award of the year. And it was just a really cool success story to go from the bottom of the barrel and really show the team how valuable and how good they really were.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's kind of a tension between CX functions, success
Yeah.
support, and the sales team, right? And I could imagine you had to fight some stereotypes or face off some initial
Yeah.
judgment. Was there some difficulty about that specifically, or was there some benefit of the sales side that you think helped out?
I think given where success has gone and the fact that it's not just retaining customers, but net retention has become such a
Hmm.
thing that there's more of a focus on cross sell, upsell, and what can we do to not only retain our customers, but to sell them more. And this is my third rodeo in this position. And I think everybody knows CCO means something different at every
Right.
company, and it has for me. But what's been lucky for me is most of the times I've been recruited in these roles, it's because people have wanted my sales background. And that's really the case with Silverfort right now as well, is when I joined in 2023, we were really a single point solution. And now we've launched 7 new tools last year, which is a huge feat in our journey to becoming a multi product, exactly, product solution. It's a huge kudos to our product and engineering team. And it was the same thing at Ona. When Ona hired me, they really hired me, ironically, to set up a professional services team. And roughly 6 months in, they said, "How do you feel about taking over sales and partnerships and SEs and everything?" And I said, "Well, as long as you promise you're not going to fire me for that job, because that is not the job that I signed up for." But you're right. There's a lot of tension, I think, between all the cross functional teams, not even sales and success. But some of my favorite stories are when I can really help bridge the gap between sales and success. And I'll tell you one more quick story and then you can tell me to shut up. Is Silverfort, we had a older gray-haired gentleman, sales rep, join about a year ago. And he wanted an intro call with me, which is awesome. I love it when salespeople want to talk to me. And he kind of goes, "Well, Michelle, I've been doing this for a long time and I've never gotten along with the success team." And I said, "Well, I've been doing this for a long time too. And this is my third rodeo. And I've never worked at a company where sales and success haven't gotten along. So I hope I can prove you wrong." And a month later, I was on a call. It was an EBR with one of his strategic accounts with him and the strategic CSM. And he slacks me and he goes, Jason, who is the CSM for the account, he goes, "He's incredible." And I said, "So does this mean I've changed your mind that sales and success can get along?" And he said, "Sold." So it's the stuff like that that really motivates me because I really do believe that we're all better when we work together as one team. It's the best thing for the company, it's the best thing for the customers. It's just a win all around.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to mention also that you don't worry about talking. That's what we're here for. We want to listen to you talk.
Okay.
So please expand and dig into where your attention takes you, where you're interested in telling stories throughout this. We're here to hear from you. So that's a great story and a great example. I think there's the cross-functional topic thread, and
Mhm.
how do you manage across those silos and across departments? I'll pull into that in a second, but I wanted to go to the past a little bit more again. Around 2020, you stepped into the role of the first ever chief customer officer at Oona. And of course, this was the pandemic, right? And a lot of things that had been working in organizations were suddenly kind of broken, right? A lot of teams transitioned to the remote work model, especially if you have an office kind of workplace. And Slack and Zoom suddenly became very important. Can you look back with us at those first 90 days? What was some kind of instincts or some kind of experiences from the sales side, working at Dell Boomi, that you had to kind of adjust or adapt in this transformation?
Yeah. I think it's always important, regardless of pandemic or war or whatnot, when I start a new role to go on what I call a listening tour. And maybe this is where I am more of a human centric leader. I think our past experiences shape us, and there's a lot of things in success that are pretty boilerplate, but it's also really important to understand why the company is doing what the company is doing, understand the humans, trying to understand what their superpowers are, and aligning them to the roles where they'll be most successful. And that I think is even more important in startups, which is where I've historically spent most of my career, because the job that you were originally hired to do was probably multiple hats because you're a small, strappy startup. But then as you get bigger, and I'm usually brought in, and I think the nice thing about getting older is we all understand where we excel and what we like. And where I'm a really good fit is when you've already identified a product market fit and an ideal customer profile, and you have hypergrowth, and you need somebody to come in and lay the infrastructure to really just have that hypergrowth excel. So at Ona, it was really going through and talking to all the people that were in place, understanding what was working, understanding what maybe wasn't working, and how do we really lean into optimizing the things that are working to either optimize cross sell, upsell, where we had incredible upsell, numbers there. The Ona was very strong at, once you had a customer, the land and expand journey was great. The bigger challenge was actually getting customers for the first time and explaining what we did.
Got it. Yeah, I think in the next questions, and it'll maybe become a little bit more apparent for listeners, but
Yeah.
I think there's a sort of a theme that I'm noticing, which is this idea of being a listener, of having humility, especially in the beginning, and the idea of like a beginner's mindset, like coming into it,
Yeah.
being totally open to hear from other people, to listen to other people, to understand them, and then to bring your perspective once
Totally.
you've built that background, right? Even as much as I think this is talked about, I think it's still not fully appreciated how powerful that is. Um, can you talk a little bit about that philosophy or that approach that you have, and where you see the sort of the value of humility, especially from leadership?
So many different ways you could take it. I mean, from a getting to understand people, I think if they feel like you truly listen and you're trying to bring in change, they're way more likely to get on the bandwagon and support you and help drive that change if they feel like they're part of the process. And then if you take it to a different level and you look at the data that shows why do people stay at jobs and why do people leave jobs, it's usually not pay. And I tell people this all the time in interviews, and it usually always gets a laugh. And I try to be consistent in a lot of my messaging. In these fast paced startups, they're a lot of work. And I spend more time with my work family than I do my personal family. And quite frankly, I don't want to work with assholes. I don't expect everybody to be my best friend
Right.
forever. But Ben, I'd like to sit down with you at the end of the day and be like, whew, that was a doozy. Let's celebrate with a beer or a wine or a tea or a coffee and just like appreciate each other as
Hmm.
humans. And it's another story I like to tell. I had an old coworker that I worked with, and he told this story. He used to work with Deloitte or for
Hmm.
Deloitte, and he got an engagement at one of the world's largest technology companies. And part of what they were hired to do was outline an RFP process because they wanted to make their purchasing decisions a data-driven decision and not a based on how we feel about this human. So they spent hours and years on this whole thing and they rolled it out and they went through it and they used it the whole time. Well, guess what? They still went with the vendor that they felt the most comfortable with. I still think people buy from who they like, and I think they want to engage with people that feel like they have their back. And that's one of the reasons why I really do believe success should be brought in. If you're not a product led, sales motion where you're doing proof of concepts or proof of value, success should be brought into those wrap up meetings. I've had countless customers stand on stage at my company's event saying, we went with you over your competitor because we really felt like you were going to partner with us and ensure our success versus sell us something and walk away. Now, if you wanted to get crazy, we could go into AI and is that going to throw a wrench into this and all the things. But, I still think there's a really big human element to all of this.
Absolutely. And for people who might not appreciate how powerful of an insight that was, you're in assuming you have a customer relationships forward, a customer
Yeah,
success model, maybe a kind of a B2B type of company, and the end of that sales process, you have that meeting and you invite the customer success person into that meeting. That right there, I think, is such a gem for people. So if they're not doing that already, that's a quick
totally.
win pretty clearly.
Yeah. It's definitely a competitive advantage and it leads to a better customer experience because you're starting a smoother transition from the pre-sales
Right.
cycle to the post-sales cycle as well. Because that's another one of my big pet peeves. If you look at the enterprise sales motion, you typically have a BDR calling in, they qualify it, they pass it over to a rep. They call with their set of questions. Then they involve their SE with their set of questions. Depending upon the company, they might have a PSO team engage and ask their set of questions. If I get a success person on the phone after a company buys and says, tell me why you bought, I'd want to jump off a cliff if that
Right.
was me. It was like, you have all these humans that have already done all this questioning. Why are you not sharing this information?
Absolutely. Yeah. So at Silverfort, I mean, you're in the
Yeah,
cybersecurity industry broadly, and it's high stakes, of course. Going back again to this idea of humility, I think you've spoken publicly about the importance of being called out by your team, and
yeah.
and in order to do that, they have to have a certain level of psychological safety, right? How do you kind of practically do that? How do you train your team to prioritize the truth, even if it's uncomfortable and when the pressure's high?
Yeah, it's funny. This has been a hot topic recently, especially in our strategic accounts, because when you look at the large accounts, the amount of change control and processes they have to go through to get enterprise software deployed in their environment is crazy. I think we have one finance company that we're working with that said they either had like 56 or 67 approvals they had to go through
Oof.
internally to get software deployed on their DCs, and it's like that's crazy. So I think one of the challenges of being a CSM is there are a lot of things outside of your control, and they are worried to raise their hand. And as much as every company I've ever worked for has tried to lead with multi-year deals out of the gate because it's the best thing to do for the company, and it's also way easier on the post-sales teams to ensure that we have a successful deployment. There's some of these contracts where we're seeing more and more strategic customers, and we're even being told the same thing at Silverfort, given the AI landscape and how quickly things are changing, not to do multi-year agreements
Mm.
anymore. So when you walk into these strategic customers, if they have 56 people that need to approve something be deployed on their DC, that's not a fast process. And a lot of times the strategic CSMs are afraid to raise their hand and say, hey, we've got an issue here. Because one, they don't want to look bad and they don't want to make their champions look bad. So that's where we're really trying to stress the importance of the executive relationships. Because if I look at it, it was me and I was deploying a customer success platform for the first time, and the deployment's running 6 months late because we don't have the right hardware to put it on. I would want the executive at the other team to reach out to me and be like, "Hey, no shame for your team. We understand these things take time and there's, other priorities that come up along the way, but just wanted to make sure you're aware of this, and are there things that we can do to pivot to make sure that this is more important?" And I think that ties Ben the human element back into it, because like as a leader and a person, I would want to know that, because how many times do you see in these massive companies, we work a lot with the CISO, there's a disconnect with what the doers are doing and what the CISOs are saying. And it's my job to help you out as Mr. and Mrs. CSM to make sure the executives all the way down to the doers are aligned. It's no impact on you and if you're doing your job or not. It's let me help you do your job better.
Mm-hmm. And I want to clarify for people who might not be familiar, can you explain what DC is in this context?
Domain controller.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm speaking identity security language.
Yeah, so I was just looking it up because I wasn't familiar myself, but basically it's sort of an authentication and security server that sort of manages these aspects, right? Okay.
Correct. So a lot of security breaches these days are actually through identity, where somebody will call in a help desk and they'll act like they're Ben and, hey, I need to reset my
Right.
password and I lost it. So we're deploying components of our software on the domain controller so we can help track the identity traffic. So if somebody bad gets your credentials, we can go in and stop them from spreading throughout other
Got it.
environments.
Got it. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for folks who might not be in the cybersecurity
Yeah,
space.
good point.
So we've talked a little bit about some of these different challenges and some of these past experiences. I wanted to talk a little bit about the present day and what you've got going on right now. Silverfort is this identity layer, managing the identity piece, which, as you said, is critical for the overall security. Um, it's deployed onto these DCs, onto these servers, and it really requires high trust, and it's going to be very visible if it fails. It's high risk. Um, how do you manage the tension between obviously the business's desire for velocity, and the
Mhm.
customer's desire for ROI, and then and maintaining security and doing it right?
Yeah, I don't know if I have an easy answer to that. I think it's a lot of different things, and maybe this is where we weave in AI and we weave in data. I mean, a lot of it is looking at customer usage data and customer adoption data so we can do a better job of saying, hey, typically when people deploy Silverfort, one of the biggest value adds right away is we give you visibility to your environment. So we expose a lot of things that people aren't aware
Mhm.
of. And then phase two is a lot of people want to put multi factor authentication in place. So when I log in, we either can integrate with an Okta or a Ping or an Azure, enter in your IDP of choice there, or you can use Silverfort, directly as well. So we use it internally. So when I log in to try to pull something out of Box, I get a prompt to sign into Silverfort. So one is tracking usage adoption to make sure that people are using it to the full extent 100% of their ability. And that helps with retention. And that also helps with cross sell, upsell, because if people are under a certain percentage of usage, we know we need to reach out and we need to put some sort of playbook in place to help drive adoption and understand why they're not using it. And then the flip side is great as well. If they're overusing it, did you do an acquisition and you need more licenses because we're a user based model? From an AI perspective, I think it's also important to try to monitor a more accurate sentiment of how the customer is actually feeling as well. And we have deployed some software that's been really helpful in that because it ingests information from Gong. So we have sentiment from our call recordings. It's analyzing our Zendesk or our support tickets. It's ingesting email and sentiment there as well. And then there's a CSM component score and an adoption score there as well. So it really gives us better visibility into how the customer is feeling just based on usage data alone, which is, I think, where the industry has been more historically. Um, but you're right. I mean, a lot of it, if there's an incident and if a customer feels like they're under attack, you can imagine emotions are pretty high, but you'd be surprised. I find a lot of the people that are in these roles, they're kind of purpose built for it. Like they don't get too high or too low, and they know it's part of the job. And we try to do some empathy training to go with it on tone and responses and supporting people. And um, it just seems to work out. And maybe this ties back to the human side of things. But I remember when I was at Oona, I was talking to a rep and the renewals person and the CSM, and they were saying, oh, so and so is not getting back to me. And I was like, well, do you know why so and so is not getting back to you? And they said, well, she's been sick. Her family, as you mentioned before, got hit with COVID pretty hard. Well, I said, well, instead of like harassing her to follow up, why don't we send her a DoorDash gift card with a message that says, hey, go get some chicken noodle soup for your family. Like, let's feel for the person. Well, it was hilarious. They did. And like 24 hours later, she responded and they were like, Michelle, you're a genius. And I'm like, no, I'm really not. I'm just put yourself in that person's shoes. And how would you like to be best supported in that situation kind of thing?
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the big themes for me, which this directly touches on, is the idea of approaching challenges with creativity, right? If you are, it's the obvious saying, right? If you keep repeating the same thing
Yeah,
and expecting different results, then it's the
totally.
definition of
Yeah.
insanity, right?
Yeah.
But the flip side of that, the positive that people can actually act on is things like, oh, maybe we could send them a gift card and make them feel better, and yeah, it's going to be a reminder to follow up with us too. But like, you show a little creativity, you use creativity, and show
Yeah.
some empathy and show understanding. It's connecting back again to the theme of listening to people, right, and sort of
Yeah.
understanding what they
Totally.
need. So I love that example, and I think there should be more there should be more flexibility inside of organizations. There should be more leeway given in terms of leadership, and people should be
Yeah.
encouraged to be more creative in this way because it feels good, and
Yeah.
also it's good
Yeah.
for business, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the AI piece here
Yeah.
and sentiment analysis and how powerful that can
Mhm.
be. More and more, as I am up to my ears in the AI conversation, I think that a lot of things come down to context engineering or context management. Essentially, you
Mhm.
know, curating the set of data that the AI looks at and focusing on the input as where the output actually, where the quality is
Yeah.
born, right? Where the quality comes from and the signals come from. Can you share an example or a time when having the right AI tool in place, having the right context set up, maybe allowed you to detect a subtle shift or detect something that would have gone missing otherwise, and that how that sort of helped you to serve customers?
Yeah, the tool that I mentioned that we're using, so the way our customer success team is segmented is we have commercial CSMs, enterprise CSMs, and strategic CSMs, and then we have leaders in region. We're a big Slack company as well. So we have our AI tool integrated into Slack. So anytime there is a keyword flag, upset or churn, or it automatically gets triggered into those managers or Slack channels that the managers are looking at. So it's really helping us at a managerial level expose and see more things that we might have been missing before because leaders can't be on every single call out there. So it's been really helpful for that. It's also really helpful in the summaries because you can go into it and ask more specific questions about where is this account or how are they feeling or what are the top priorities. And it gives a good overview on that. I'm still a little leery about AI. We haven't exposed it to customers yet. Like I know people are doing things with agents. I consider my partner, he's an extremely smart human and he's on his third company and he's saying, look, it's still hallucinating too much. I don't feel comfortable yet. And we don't either. We're trying to do more stuff internally, really to focus on the sentiment and identifying that and the cross sell upsell journey first, or the churn stuff first. And then to your point on like the input, more data analysis and log analysis. So we're really getting some good operational efficiency gains from a timing perspective, like some of the things that our support team is doing, because we have to mine a lot of log data to help remedy our support tickets. We're hoping it's going to save like 300 hours in 2026 based on some of the model data we have. So I want to be super clear. I don't see it replacing humans. We are not getting rid of people at all over here. We love the humans we have in place. I don't want anybody to freak out that their job is at risk, but it'll help us scale the teams in the right way so we're more profitable. And, part of the reason why I was hired, and, you see the photos of the 4 kids behind me is I want to have a successful exit because I've got to pay for 4 humans to go to college soon. And let's be honest, they're not getting academic scholarships. So, yeah,
That's a great way to tie it back. I think I'm sure your kids are all very bright, and I'm sure that their prospects are bright as well. I think the we could touch on this topic, which I think
yeah,
is the reality and also the exaggeration around
hmm
AI related job loss. Um,
yeah,
you know, I could also take it in the direction of the new roles that are developing and the way that roles are evolving.
yeah,
I think it's undeniable that there's some amount of job loss that can be attributed to AI, but I
yeah,
think that there's also, you know, not to be too blunt, but like there's also a massive opportunity if you lean in, of course, right?
totally.
And if we look back in history at these waves of technology, I mean, go all the way back
Yeah,
to, industrial era, electrification, the rise of the internet. Um,
yeah,
every one of these displaced some jobs and then created new ones.
totally.
And I
Yeah.
think that obviously the same is true with AI. We're already seeing organizations hiring, AI specific roles. We're seeing job descriptions evolve to include, specific requirements around AI capabilities. And overall, I guess, to get to a question here, what are some of the opportunities that you see as far as the actual role, not necessarily the tool, but the human side of using AI and
Yeah.
leveraging it?
It's a great question, and you mentioned how Elon gave me Alumni of the Year award, and I love my university. I still do a lot with my university, and one of the things I recently did is some of the professors in the business school reached out to myself and some of the other grads asking us, how should we better train our students so they're ready for AI? So, one major applaud out to them for even thinking through this and reaching out to people that are in the industry doing it. And it was a very interesting roundtable because it was myself who's more on, the go to market side of things. And then it was a woman who works for one of the top insurance companies in the Americas. And this is what she's over, like their AI strategy. And then it was another woman from more of a nonprofit and how nonprofit is using it. And to tie it back to the human element, we all went there. We said, look, it's more about this person has to have the knowledge to be able to know what questions to ask the AI so it can get the data that it wants in the right ways. Like it's not teaching people how I think to use the AI that's the problem. Like I think people are willing to embrace new technology, but teaching them, I guess, the EQ, the liberal arts skills, the curiosity skills, the well, why and why and how. And it was interesting. And the professors on the phone were kind of like, you guys are definitely focusing more on like the EQ side of things and the IQ side of things. Cause, and we were like, well, we still think that that's super important.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. I was having a conversation. I do a games night with my friends
Yeah.
online, and And we were having a conversation the other day about somebody had gone to the doctor, and
Yeah.
here that you could think of the doctor as sort of this metaphor for the expert AI, right? Um, but they went to the doctor, and I forget what the particular issue that they had was, and they asked the doctor, and the doctor sort of gave them this very comforting kind of answer. And they have like the bedside manner practice that they do, and these kind of things.
Totally.
And and basically, the conclusion was like, you're just going to have to deal with this. There's nothing that we can do for you. And obviously, that's not really a great solution. And
Yeah.
so the person went and like did their own research and checked it out and like realized, oh no, like doctor maybe just didn't know about this, or maybe I got a bad doctor or something. And then they found like, yeah, there actually was a solution. But but the reason I mention this story is because, if you take it into the AI world, take this example,
Totally.
it's the idea of not disengaging your brain just because there's an expert in the room,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not just accepting the answer that the AI spits out just because it sounds convincing and it's worded in a way that's very friendly, right?
Yeah.
And that takes to your point, it takes EQ. It takes a certain amount
Totally.
of
Curiosity and desire to learn.
right.
Yeah.
And so I think that is generally, the both the trap and also the kind of the skill that's needed,
Yeah.
right? Whether you're talking to a doctor or somebody else, yeah, listen to what they have to say, of course. If they're an expert,
Yeah.
certainly listen to them. But I think you also want to bring your own rational function, your own
Yeah.
sense of things, and that's sort of the, I guess so. To get towards a question here instead of just rambling, I think that there's this meta skill of using AI intelligently with your brain
Yeah.
engaged, and and I wonder if there's any examples you could share or thoughts you have about how to build that out, how to make that repeatable, how to instill that in an organization.
It's a good question. I think curiosity, it kind of even ties back to what are the skills that you look for when you hire a CSM. And a lot of it is curiosity and a willingness to learn and want to try out new things. And then how do you support it from an organization is to encourage people to try new things and also say it's okay to fail and fail fast. I mean, we learn so much more from our, I don't want to say maybe so much more. We learn a lot from our mistakes. And I think that's one of the big problems we have as a society is we don't talk about it. And we should, because we learn so much more from that than sometimes our wins. So one, just encouraging people, whether that be through oh, now I'm totally lost for words. What's what's it called when you have the day where people go build stuff and they do whatever, like setting time off of
Oh,
work?
like
Do you know what I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about?
like Google had like famously the 20% policy where their engineers could build whatever they wanted on Fridays.
Correct, and we do have this is one thing Silverfort does do well. We have every quarter, we have 1 month where we get a mental health day, so you get the whole day off, and then the other 2 months, we have what's called a focus day. So you are encouraged to spend time, to do things in passion projects or read things or try things on AI bots and agents. We even did a design workshop with the success team last year when we did an all hands meeting and we brought in a third party vendor and they just sat around and they talked about different problems that we had in the org or things that were going well and how could we look at using AI to lean into that and optimize those things. It's setting up, I think, the safe time and space to allow people to use that part of their brain, because I think one of the problem's not the right word with success people is we can be very reactive and not so much proactive. So one, giving people the time to do it, and then two, encouraging people that it's okay to try new things and it's okay if you fail at it, as long as we learn about the failures and learn what we pivot and do differently next time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that idea of the mental health day is obviously important. I haven't heard of the idea of the focus day also. That seems like something that's really needed, especially in a time of transition that we're in, right? People need a little time to retool. Um,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of organizations out there today going through, they're in different phases of this transition
Hmm.
essentially. The AI wave is here, it's upon us, and we're either riding it or maybe it's crashing over our heads. But
Yeah.
I think the need for a little extra time to retool and to explore and to have the organization that supports you, I think that's a win-win for everybody. Um, I wanted to finish the episode as we head towards the end of the
Yeah.
episode here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the future, and we've just been talking about AI and AI agents as well. You mentioned I've been doing some projects personally, some side projects around AI agents and exploring the space. And to me, having touched it and played with it a bit, it really feels kind of obvious that the future is going to have a lot of AI agents in it.
Mm.
And there's going to be, I think, a lot of organizations where, every employee will be outnumbered by, if you have 10 employees, you might have 30 AI agents. So the
Yeah.
number of agents out there, it's pretty easy to spin up a new one. They're obviously very powerful and have a lot of capability when they're configured correctly and securely. Um, but uh, if we think of the AI agent as a kind of a customer that could come in and interface either with our business over the internet, or maybe
Yeah.
internally they could be treated maybe as sort of like an employee. How are you thinking about this at Silverfort, and thinking about what does customer success look like if you've got
Yeah.
a mix of humans and agents that you're serving?
Yeah.
How do you manage that in a way that doesn't just break the model?
Well, it's funny because first and foremost, we're thinking about it from a go-to-market perspective because we actually have an AI security agent. So our technology will actually be able to tell you, because this is one of the things a lot of companies don't know about right now, is where do they have AI agents deployed? So, one, we give them visibility to that. And then two, we tell them who created those. And then three, we can start to monitor who has access to what things. So, if I try to go in and see what your salary is and you don't report to me, the HR agent isn't going to give me that level of exposure kind of thing. So, a lot of our focus right now is making sure we are the leader in the AI security space, AI agent security space. From an internal perspective and using agents, it's a couple years off for us. I haven't given it a lot of thought, I'll be honest. We're trying to look at it internally and have our tech support teams and our CSMs validate the data that we're getting now, to make sure, again, the hallucinations aren't crazy before we would expose that to a customer and then cause more thrashing or more problems. Um, so I think it's still a little ways off from what I've seen. I'm actually impressed that I feel like Success has been talking about, AI for a while now, and it was the support teams that kind of adopted it first, which does fall under my umbrella here, and we've built some stuff internally for that. And then the Success teams are starting to expand and use it more. I think we're a ways off to exposing AI agents. And talking with some of my peers who have done that, some of the problems they are talked about or discussed is what happens if a customer comes in and they start on like a BDR agent, but then they need to transfer to a renewals agent or a support agent. There's a lot of challenges between how do you merge or successfully transfer over those conversations. I will say the other thing I did look at this year that I don't know how I feel about it, and I would love your feelings on it, is, some of these agents that actually call you and they sound like a real person,
Hmm.
and I heard the vendor demo, and my gut reaction was like, "Oh, that's creepy."
Right.
Like, I feel like I'm being lied to and dishonest.
Right.
Like, if this agent called me and they said, "Hey, my name's Ben," I'm assuming I'm talking to Ben, you Ben, a human
Right.
Ben, and then when I ask a question that's too hard and it says, "Well, that's all I can handle right now. Let me flip you over and schedule a meeting with Sally Smith to answer those questions," I would kinda go, I feel like I was just like, I feel dirty. I
Right.
mean, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, deception is obviously a bad policy,
Yeah.
and I think that it's a little bit of a case of the technology getting ahead of regulation,
Yeah.
and I think that's gonna there's kind of constantly be some of that going on in tech in general because it moves so
Yeah.
quickly. But I do believe that there needs to be some kind of at least basic regulation about identifying, especially over voice, where you don't have
Yeah.
the usual kind of context clues, especially if you have a demographic of people that are maybe have lower tech literacy. You really have to have a policy, you know, I mean, if not at a government regulation level, as an organization, you have to have a policy that says, look, we require all of our AI agents to identify themselves as such.
Yeah.
I think that's really fundamental, and it doesn't hurt your organization in any way, and it will only help you to build trust with your customers, which is a long-term win.
And that's kind of where I went and was thinking through as well. And it's funny because I've started to pay more attention to this stuff. And if you watch TV that still has commercials, the Progressive actually does a really good job of this. If you ever notice on the Progressive commercials, they'll actually have a statement on it that says these are AI generated agents. I really value the transparency. I'm also probably a complete dork and I don't know how much of the world actually looks at this stuff. But, I would agree. If we were ever to adopt a phone agent that would call out, I would want to somehow start the conversation that says, hey, this is, not a real human kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that part of it, one thought I've had about this, just riffing on it here, is, you know, y- how do you make that statement in a way that is sort of it's going to build maximum trust, not just like, oh, here's a disclaimer, but like, how can you actually use that and make it something better, right? So I had the thought the other day of like, hey, I'm an AI agent that was set up by Michelle, right? And
Yeah.
identify the human who built this or who was involved in
Yeah.
its deployment or who has configured it, right? And then it's like, oh, it's not just this faceless, nameless organization deploying AI to kind of ignore its customers or, just wring out some efficiency from them. No, there was a human behind this, right? And then if I have a problem with the agent, I'll go and say in support, like, hey, the agent set up by Michelle had this problem, right?
Mhm.
And so there's that responsibility and also the trust that gets built there. That's a thought I had recently. But I think in general, um, people are not so easily fooled by AI as
Yeah.
some organizations would like to think. And it's the moment that you detect that you've been deceived or that an organization is trying to deceive you, I mean, obviously, you know, that's going to be a major blow to how you think about the company, how you think about the service they're providing. That's going to hit you in the retention. That's going to hit you in the
And hit your
churn rate.
turn. I agree.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was smiling when you said, how would you write that up? But I was thinking, well, that's when I'd go ask my friend ChatGPT for different suggestions.
Right. Right.
But the overall conversation is very interesting. How do you humanize an AI agent? And then it would also even be, should you humanize an AI agent, or what are the things you continue to use humans for
Yeah.
versus, what do you look at using AI for? But that's a different podcast for a different day over some cocktails, but it would be a fun conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. So I wanted to wrap up the episode with a final question here for you. As you look at this landscape, as you think about how things are going, where they're going, do you have some thoughts about what you're excited to learn, what you think people should be learning to, what should they be leaning into as we're heading towards the end of Q1 2026 here?
I definitely would encourage using AI and not fighting AI and researching how can we use it in the best ways possible to make us more productive. I don't know if balance is a real thing. I would love for us to all leverage AI to give us more balance if that's even possible, or are too many people type A like I am, where even if we did use it to offset some things, we would find other things to do because we just constantly want to learn more and do more things and try new things. But I wouldn't fight AI. I would embrace AI. And I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is like the out of the box thinking. Like, what can we really do to connect with people, um, and make them feel good and make us feel good? The behavior, I think, is, sending the chicken noodle soup thing. It makes me actually feel like I did a nice thing for the day, which makes me smile. Because how many days are there that you're at the end of the day and you're just like, wow, that was a tough one. Did I accomplish anything? Like, what did I do? So I think always keep learning, always look at AI and what we can do there, and always just look at how can we be a good human. I really think it's important to be a good human.
On that note, I totally agree. Let's wrap up for today. This has been the CX Files podcast with Michelle Wideman. You can reach out to her on LinkedIn if you have an interest, if you want to connect. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.